guys, I'm April from Giggle Glitter Graphics, and today I'm assembling the cover and pages of my haunted house journal. I'm going to show all of the steps, but I'm also going to put timestamps on this video, so if there's a part that you don't want to watch, you can just skip ahead to the next section. I'm constructing the cover out of chipboard, and I will link to that down below, but I did double my chipboard up. I glued 2 pieces together for each panel just to make it extra sturdy. And I'm attaching my pieces to a piece of gift bag that is craft paper on the inside, but it was black on the outside. And I think it's gonna make a really nice cover. My panels wanted to curl up just a little bit after I glued them down, so I ended up putting a book on top of them to kind of flatten them out while they dried. Then I gave it a little trim about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch away from my chipboard on all sides and trimmed the corners out so that I could fold it all neatly in. Then I just used my bone folder to get a nice crease, get everything all nice and tight before gluing it down. My glue did seep out a little bit, so I grabbed a paper towel and just rubbed it. The Fabri-Tac will kind of ball up and roll off if you rub it fast enough before it dries really well. So I wanted to clean up those edges just in case some of this border was showing. Then I used my bone folder just to kind of reaffirm those creases before I folded it, and I got a really nice fold that way. And now the front of my cover is nice and neat and ready for the next step. I picked this nice fabric for the inside of my journal. I picked this up at a thrift store. I was super excited to use it. I bought it specifically for this project. And I'm just gonna hit the edges with some pinking shears. That has been my favorite tool of choice lately. I feel like it roughs up the edges a little bit, and I don't know, I just really like the look of it. It's been working for me. Now, hindsight was 20/20 on this. I definitely should not have put this fabric on the inside before putting my trims on the outside. That meant I couldn't wrap my trims on the outside around and then cover them with this fabric. So I worked around it. It turned out all right. But you might want to do the outside before you do the inside. This was also an upholstery type fabric, and I had a lot of buckling whenever I was trying to close my journal. So I ended up having to reposition it a couple of times, and I finally got it to lay nice and smooth. What I did is I folded it up, attached it, and then laid it back down, and that did make it kind of bow upward, but as it dried and then you kind of pushed on it, the fabric accommodated, and I got a nice flat clean inside. Flipping my journal over, I grabbed a piece of lace. This was from a lace valance that I picked up at the thrift store for a couple dollars. Now, this is a good example of I should have done the inside after this. I could have wrapped the lace around and glued it on the inside and hidden the glue, but because I glued my fabric to the inside, that is not the case. So I carefully added Fabri-Tac to the decorative portion of the lace, the thicker areas, and put it down carefully that way. And that worked great. And I kind of liked the rough edge all the way around. So in the end, this was a win, even though it maybe wasn't structurally perfect. Next, I'm moving to the front cover. I've already pre-laid out all of my pieces just to get an idea of what I wanted the cover to look like. I am using cutouts from the Haunted House Junk Journal kit as well as the Haunted House Snippets kit, and I will link to those down below. The main panel that I've torn out, that big piece of collage paper, is from the Snippets kit. There's a whole sheet of collage paper. It's really fun in there, so I wanted to use that as a base. And then I grabbed the House Fussy Cut from the Junk Journal kit as a second large element. And then I kind of filled in from there. I'm using dark brown burlap. I'm using a really loosely woven cheesecloth and a little bit of gray fabric that has some vintage kind of ledger stamping on it. I thought that brought in another nice element. It did take me a few to figure out how to get it transferred from the little board that I started on and kind of make it a reality on the cover. I ended up really playing with that brown burlap, and then finally I had the idea. I was like, oh, let me cut this in half. Let me put part on the top, part on the bottom. And I felt like that really framed it all out and brought it together. Finally, I decided to commit to that back panel and get it glued down. And then I started moving into some of those little clusters that surround it. This one is a key that's cut out also from the Haunted House kit. And I've got cheesecloth and then a strip of gray fabric and then burlap and then the key and then a little bit of ribbon made from some of that vintage trim. It's like that stretchy binding tape that comes in the packets. I love that stuff. I get it at the thrift store all the time. So I made a little bow out of that and I layered it all up there. And then I got the cluster for the bottom left-hand corner. This is a piece of paper doily. I used vintage photo distress ink on it, so it wasn't quite so white, and I'm just gonna glue that down. And then I've got 3 little fussy cuts from the snippets kit. There is a little letter, a little postcard, and then a rose. And I did do vintage photo distress ink on the edges of all of those as well. Moving to the top, I have another little piece of my black gift bag that I used to wrap the whole cover in. And I'm using that to kind of map the haunted house text from the journal kit. And I'm layering that with some lace. And it took me a little bit to get the positioning just right because I didn't want there to be like a big gap between the title and then the frame of that painting down below. So it took some fiddling. And I got that little piece of lace and cheesecloth right under that little tiny photo. Those are so cute. And that totally finished it off. And it came out pretty much the way I had it laid out on my piece of chipboard before transferring it. Next, I'm going to cover the spine in another piece of burlap. I really like how the lace and the burlap are layering up together. So I wanted to continue that look. And I'm going to do a no-sew signature insertion on this journal. I have 4 signatures, but I have taken and sewn them together with a 3-hole pamphlet stitch already, and I'm not going to show that in this video. I did also tear all the edges and ink them in vintage photo and black ink already, and it took a while. I don't know if I would do it again, but I think they look fantastic for this journal. Now I've got some of that vintage seam binding tape. It has a little stretch, but once you stretch it, it's kind of gone because of its age. And I'm just wrapping that around about 5 times, I think. And the goal is to have 4 of the bands on the inside, 1 for each signature, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna tuck those ends underneath and give them a little crisscross and then tie a bow. And that is gonna finish off the look for the outside, as well as give me a place to put my signatures on the inside. One of the reasons I doubled up my chipboard thickness was so that when I did this binding method, I wouldn't get any buckling in my spine. That double thick chipboard held up really well to the tension of tying this nice and tight around the outside. So now I can just slip my signatures in. I just find the center page and slide it right underneath that ribbon and repeat that for each one. Now, because I have done a 3-hole pamphlet stitch on these, I won't be able to add and remove pages within each signature. I could add some things around them if I wanted, but I like having those strings on the inside that they either just add a little something, just having that extra strings hanging, or I'll be able to add things to those to kind of have some dangles later on. Finally, I just go through and find out if I need to adjust the tightness on that at all. I make sure everything is sitting nicely. I did go back through and undo my ribbon and tighten it all up a little more and then retie my bow just to get it all a bit tighter. But overall, this was a super easy binding method. Now moving to the back of the journal, I didn't want to leave it just plain lace, so I went with another strip of burlap and just glued that on really quickly, and then added another strip of vintage lace. You can maybe see to the side there, I played around with adding a doily, but I just couldn't find a good spot for it. In hindsight, I could have made this some sort of belly band and tucked something underneath of it, but I'll be honest, I'm not big on doing crazy things on the backs of my journals. I want them to be pretty, but I don't always want them to be functional. So now I flipped to the inside cover of my journal, and I had toyed with the idea of kind of curtains coming down on the inside. And when I tried to shape them out of the cheesecloth, it wasn't working. It just kind of looked kind of lumpy and sad, and it didn't give me that airy, tattered curtain look I was looking for. So I opted to do a flip instead. So I've got a piece of lace cut from my vintage lace valance, and I'm just turning that into a shallow pocket at the bottom. And then I cut a piece of cheesecloth that just covered the whole inside, and I'm gonna make a flip out of that. I'm just gonna attach that at the top with a little fabric tack. And then I have some vintage lace trim that I'm going to put over that just to kind of finish it off. I had also toyed with like a curtain rod look or something like that, and everything just was too clunky and I couldn't quite get it to look polished and nice. I think this came out really cute, and the cheesecloth kind of sticks to the lace at the bottom, and I feel like that's going to hold it shut. I decided to do the same thing on the back panel, but with a side tuck this time. So I just used the same lace, the same supplies, and I put the lace up and down on the outside edge of the journal, added my cheesecloth, added my lace trim at the top, and made a side tuck. All of the printables I used in this journal are linked down below, as well as other printables that match the Haunted House journal kit. I hope this has inspired you to make your own haunted house or Halloween themed journal. There will be page decorating and a flip through videos coming up for this series. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and you'll get notified when those are available. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.